Now, it should come as no surprise that Dead Island has been one of my favorite franchises to put characters in. A ever adapting zombie apocalypse, whether it be the environmental adaptation of Dead Island 1 and Riptide, or the occasions of Dead Island 2. And believe it or not, I've actually made a playlist of this, and I will be remaking my very first Dead Island video that honestly started off the survival series in general. So, can Total Drama survive Dead Island, the original one? And I will be including that one in my What If King Cobra was in Dead Island, the one from Godzilla the series. So you guys should hopefully enjoy that one. But with that being said, with this being an old request, yes, this is what this video essentially is here. When I actually made my Arkham Batman one, I had a request for either Spider-Man in general. The comment didn't specify whether it's Pete or Miles and which one it was, so I decided just to, in the name of the full spirit, actually use Insomniac Spider-Man as in the thumbnail shows. So we're actually going to, give Peter his just desserts, if you will. And keep in mind as well for future projects as well. Other than my anniversary special, I have one for Celine, one for Rain, which I promised a while back. Actually, kind of does need to get into the survival series a bit more. And one for cryptids. Yes, cryptids are coming to the channel and are coming to the survival series. So I do hope you guys enjoy that. And yeah, I actually do look forward to giving you guys more of this content. And in all honesty, I do kind of have a goal with like a large majority of my videos to reach like 200 videos per each playlist, at least in the normal ones, not the what ifs, right? But with that being said here, yeah, like I said, we are going to be using Insomniac Spider-Man. And a couple rules before I really begin here. You perhaps the guys are probably going to see it later on. Let's start off with Peter. Peter will actually be from the PS4 game, okay? And he will be going from his own retail of Dead Island. Keep in mind with Batman, I kind of saw him being able to get onto the plane and eventually coming back because he was rich. I kind of did that with him. But again, as we all know, someone infected is on the plane, and well, yeah, he managed to get his bat suit on and just get out of there. But again, we are going to be using Pete with his standard advanced suit from Spider-Man 1, or from the Spider-Man PS4 game, right? So he won't have his spider arms, okay? He won't have his electro webs and stuff like that. Also, we'll only be giving him his web shooters. Yes. So no concussive webbing, no shock webbing, no trip mines, none of that. The reason why I'm doing this is because it's just way too easy for Pete. Alright? He easily gets into those building to, I would definitely say, city block level ranges, especially with the Miles Morales game and stuff like that. Albeit it did take a toll on him after a while. So Pete is going to also have Mary Jane in this one. And the same rules as Batman also apply, where he is not immune to the infection. So if he gets bit or if he gets infected in any sort of way, it's a wrap for him, okay? And then we also have to look at how he would do with either the mentality of the place, is what I'm trying to say here. Because again, with Arkham Batman, he would have stayed. With Sonny the Deathclaw, he would have left because, again, he doesn't really have too much business here now that everything's kind of wrapped up, right? So with Pete, we're going to actually reflect on how his personality would change through the story and actually discuss whether or not he would stay or leave. MJ will also play a role here because, again, it does make sense for Pete to have someone here. The reason why I didn't do this for the other characters I've actually done here is because it would just make less sense for them. If Batman had Oracle there in Los Angeles somehow, he would actually work more to get her out than to probably come back, which again would have avoided the whole situation entirely and would have gone against his character and gone against her character as well. So that's why I kind of left Oracle and the likes of Robin and somebody out. So, yeah. So, without further ado, please comment down below, like and subscribe and share with your friends. And let us begin with, can Spider Man survive Dead Island 2? So to start off where this is going to take place, this is going to take place after Pete and Miles secure the Rhino, and Pete goes on his vacation with MJ. However, he's going to Los Angeles. Everything's fine. MJ and him are having the best time of their lives. They're at the, let's probably say, the hotel or the Harpland Hotel and stuff like that. But again, as we all know, the zombie outbreak happens and they try to get evacuated, but it's not working. So he and MJ hide out in a little shed or maybe a neighboring house, right? And they're just seeing the carnage happening. And unfortunately, Pete's got to suit up as Spider-Man, web shooting and trying to restrain all of the basic zombies so far. You know, the shamblers, walkers, and runners. You know, the start of the infection, right? But again, let's actually talk about this here real quick. Does Pete kill the zombies? I'm going to say at first, no. You see, I don't think Pete would start just going on a killing spree unless he really had to. He would try to restrain them. He would try to knock them unconscious. But again, I feel like once he sees a shambler burst from his attacks, because again, keep in mind how fragile they actually are. They'll die by just simply basic punches alone. And I think Pete would be devastated for a little bit, but would have to lock in. And his spidey sense also would be kind of like a hammering bell. You know, it would be all over the place, is what I'm trying to say. Constantly ringing, constantly detecting, and he would honestly use his agility to get around because, again, he doesn't really have anything solid to really, or pretty much anything of a good distance to really web sling on. So this actually does rely on more of his physical agility than anything. But I do see Pete trying to get people out of there, Pete turning in his hands, or people turning in his hands as they were already infected or something. So he would have a very hard time with this altogether. And one of the few things I think would actually be noted is when Pete actually realizes he does have to kill. And in all honesty, when he starts that, he's going to really take a moment to get over it. But he and MJ would definitely be able to make their way to Emma John's house, as I do believe her maid would be able to let them in at that time. Now, another person we have to talk about is Emma Jaunt. Emma Jaunt doesn't, meet Pete in his timeline. She meets Bruno. Considering I got added Danny in the Deathclaw portion of it, so we're going to give Bruno this one here. So, believe it or not, Bruno would actually go through the same thing he does in Dead Island 2. Making his way to Emma John's house, but this time along with probably Peter and MJ also there, they'll be able to let him in a lot quicker. And so this is where they find out he's immune, and everything kind of just goes, probably a lot smoother. Bruno and Pete are able to work together to actually be able to, establish themselves and secure the house. And this is where I would probably say Pete doesn't reveal his secret identity to them because, again, he's still Spider-Man. He's still, in a much more advanced armor and stuff like that. But keep in mind, Bruno and him would actually be pretty chill. I feel like their personalities could easily rub off each other. Kind of the cool kid and the nerdy kid, if you will. And this is where Sam B comes in, and he's like, whoa, Spider-Man. It's crazy. Anyway, how you enjoying the zombie apocalypse? But believe it or not, with everyone knowing Spider-Man, I feel like Pete would honestly feel a bit more comfortable, but would obviously be devastated that he just killed somebody. However, this is where I think MJ, Bruno, and even Sam would tell them, look, you're going to have to do what you got to do out here. And do I think Pete would get over it? No, he would still feel bad the fact that he does have to kill people instead of really curing them. But again, with him not really knowing what the cure is, he would have to honestly, kind of just go with it right now. So him and Bruno would also try to convince MJ to stay. Keep in mind, one of the few things that obviously gets us annoyed with MJ is the fact that she's willing to put herself in danger, even if it's really not a beneficial moment. However, I do think after a while, she would be able to convince him that she's not, fragile. And while Pete knows that for sure, this infection is very different. So Pete would be like, all right, but if you get in trouble one little time with these things, you're basically getting taken off the field. And I think she would agree with that considering the circumstances and the things that Pete has described to her. So the three of them would definitely be making their way back to the Harpland Hotel. Back in Pete and MJ's case, and, well, the first time in Bruno's case. Or maybe he's already been there. We never know with these characters, right? But again, the first few zombies they do encounter are the Shamblers and the Walkers. And the Runners as well. I think the Runners would definitely be interesting for Pete to take on. Because again, they're actually pretty agile. Not as agile as him, but agile enough to where, Pete does have to kind of try. One of the few I can definitely see giving Pete a hard time and giving him a risk of infection is definitely the Swarmers. Considering the sheer fact that he has to be able to counter them or pretty much attack their webbing, it's very possible Pete just like webs one up and yanks the hive out of it in a grotesque fashion. But again, he would definitely also the grenade walkers. Yeah, Pete's definitely confiscating those vests and using those grenades any chance he gets. Same with MJ as well. So they will likely be killing a few zombies and definitely confiscating the grenades off of them. However, the incendiary walkers and runners, respectively, as well as the electrical walkers and runners, yeah, those guys would be very interesting, and Pete would actually analyze far quicker than the Slayers would that these zombies seem to have some sort of adaptive properties to them, especially the incendiary walkers and grenadiers and stuff like that. So they would actually be pretty interesting as a whole, considering the sheer fact that when they get there, they are going to split up for a little bit. Pete takes the high ground, and Bruno takes the low ground with MJ. Now, this also is where, in the Harpland Hotel, where they do find the pool of Caustic X. And I do believe this would be the time where Pete actually does take the time to study and make it. No, not make it, actually create a decent gadget out of it. For starters, he would definitely give Bruno a good few of the Caustic X bombs, okay? And Bruno as well would definitely enjoy this and definitely apply this to whatever weapons he has. Keep in mind, MJ would do the same thing as well, because I do think she would have at least a pistol, maybe an axe or something, something reliable. She's definitely going to have a gun on her or something like that. But again, she is going to be well equipped. As for whatever Pete makes here for himself, I think a Caustic X webbing or Caustic X spray would actually help him out here, considering the fact that he is relying on his web shooters and maybe a few physical melee weapons like his brass knuckles. But this is also where the group would definitely meet their first crusher, that being the Bride. And again, this would actually be a fun, this is going to be like some funny jokes here. They're like, well, I know I like big, strong women, but this is a little bit overkill, And so, what the funny part about it is here, I could definitely see Pete trying to web it up, and it's just like, okay, it's not breaking it, so they're not that strong. But this is where MJ is like, geez, so this is what they're really going through. And this is kind of one of the few moments where I definitely see MJ kind of being like, maybe she really shouldn't be out here, especially after seeing what the Bride did to the military general and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't see that going too well. So I do think after this, and definitely after getting Amanda, keep in mind, they would definitely help her out with her video, and they would just straight up grab her and take her back to Emma John's house. But this also changes a lot of things here. MJ actually does reflect Amanda a little bit. And I actually do see MJ becoming her mentor, if you will, in a social media aspect. Meaning that Amanda would actually be safer for the rest of the story, especially with MJ with her. Now, this is where I can actually see Pete making his way to Sola while Bruno actually goes to house. All right. Now, Pete does have to deal with the Whippers. Now, you might say, why are you sending Pete to Sola and Bruno to house? Well, believe it or not, I think believe it or not, the Slayers are destined to kind of go to house anyway and kind of unlock their full potential, if you will, or pretty much, well, dedicate themselves with their full potential. Now, Pete and Bruno would probably be able to kind of figure everything out, and they would definitely go through their shared experiences, bursters, screamers, slobbers, and stuff like that. But this is where Pete definitely gets the hive grenade at this time. And believe it or not, I actually do think this would become one of Pete's main weapons here by using the bees to be able to do this. However, I could also see Pete altering it a little bit with spiders. So, oh god, I think that sent a chill down my spine. So imagine Pete making a communal spider bomb, right? Where he pretty much launches it, and then all these spiders break out and start attacking the zombies. I know it sounds scary, doesn't it? Now, Pete's first encounter with Dirge is definitely a death match. One that Dirge would definitely participate in with the Clotters. Keep in mind, the reason why Dirge didn't participate was because, again, the Slayers we play as are a part of the autophage, meaning they had the potential to really merge with the Dirge here. Now, believe it or not, I actually do see Pete losing this one. The reason why is because Clotters are very specific in order to beat them. And I do think while his spider sense will be able to evade most of it, having them and the Dirge there, with the Dirge probably making more to overwhelm Peter intentionally, because keep in mind, he can spawn to like 3 to 4 at a time here and just simply overwhelm Pete. So Pete would definitely likely get maybe bruised up. I don't see him getting cut up or infected here, but again, he definitely has to leave here. So I definitely see him fleeing Sola and then actually making himself a new armor. So probably something along the lines of a Spider-Man Mark III armor, if you will. A lot more durable, a lot stronger, and aligned with some razor blades. So this would give him the round 2 with the Clotters, and with a much more bloodlusted and out of control, well, not out of control, much more bloodlusted and morals off Pete here, he should actually be able to not only beat the Clotters, but actually be able to get a good round in with Dirge and forcing him to flee. So Pete would actually continue with Sola. And while he would not be able to really commune with the orbs, because again, they're very specific to the Slayers, he would definitely be able to destroy them, but definitely have to flee from the entire army of Clotters that pretty much fill up the movie theater. So, yeah, Pete would then leave Sola and telling Grace he would be back, and this is where he and Bruno would ultimately regroup at the Sterling Hotel along with MJ and Amanda. Now, keep in mind, while MJ and Amanda both aren't really there, I would definitely have them go on a side mission to go into the whatchamacallit, the news station, go into the news station, and that's where they actually meet the other 2 reporters there, and that forms this tight little group here. Now, Pete and Bruno would probably have a private conversation about Dr. Rubin and Tisha. Now, I do think Pete will also find out about the autophage, and when Bruno pretty much describes it as it's in the sewer, he'll be like, okay, I'll be right back. So Pete will go into the sewer until he finds the biomass. And I think at this point, Pete would be absolutely disgusted and livid. This is what the military did. This is essentially what they created. And I think Pete would also have enough of it when a mutator actually does emerge. You see, the mutators themselves are just straight up nightmarish. Something just out of the ordinary for zombies. They're not even like the main wrestlers from Dead Island Riptide where they're just caused by the zombie virus being introduced to toxic waste. No, they're another mutation from the autophage. And at this point, yeah, Pete has encountered, butchers and stuff like that. But this right here, oh, heck nah. Pete would be rushing back to get Dr. Rubin. Keep in mind, this is a more or less restraint Peter here. So if he actually got Ruben, he probably would choke him out a little bit. But again, as the story progresses, Pete would then come face to face with the Reubinator. And upon finding Tisha is the cure, he would probably tell Bruno to go after her. This is actually going to change a lot for a bit. But again, he would definitely, I think he would just brutally beat up and beat down the Reubinator. Like, that's the best way I can definitely put it. Because with Ruben having caused all this, having done all this nonsense, just to find Bruno here, yeah, I think Pete would just have enough and just actually beat him to a bloody pulp here. But believe it or not, this actually does change the story of Dead Island or Dead Island 2. I do think Bruno will probably be able to catch or capture Tisha. And keep in mind, Sam still gets cured like in the original. And, well, they get to leave. But what about Pete and MJ and Bruno? What would happen there? Well, Bruno and Peter would actually go back to Sola for the final round with Dirge with the help of Cadenza. So when that happens, they would actually now have to figure out what's happening, what to do next, right? And well, at this point, I do see Peter and MJ staying. The reason why I'm saying that is because I don't think Pete really has it in him to leave all those innocent civilians in there. Now, I do believe he would probably start making a safe spot, a ultimate safe spot, if you will, kind of the same way Arkham Batman would. Pete would have different gadgets, more lethal gadgets, mind you, and along with him and Bruno, and as well as likely Bruno losing Tisha, because again, she is a very skilled person, so she would definitely be able to evade it. It's definitely going to be a little bit of a test or a little bit of a experience just for the both of them to ultimately find Tisha, and Pete could just use her blood to make a cure. But with that being said here, does Spider-Man survive Dead Island 2? Yes, he does. Even with these handicaps we placed on him, Pete still manages to actually pull through, not only because of his high intelligence, but because of his willpower as well. Given his intelligence, I don't think he would be able to figure out an entire cure for an autophage that's constantly adapting and mutating different people into different forms and variants of zombies. I don't think he'll be able to figure that out at the end of the day. But this does kind of change a lot of things here going forward in Pete's timeline, but we're not here to discuss that today. So, with that being said, be sure to comment down below, like and subscribe and share with your friends. This is Legendary Grimlock, and you guys have a blessed day.